I'm Laurie Gaylor.
And I'm Dan Barker. We're executive directors of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Today, we're going to meet some leading freethinkers, abortion rights advocates, and activists working against Christian nationalism.
The Freedom from Religion Foundation, which produces Freethought Matters, is the nation's largest association of free thinkers. That's atheists, agnostics, and other non-believers. We invite you to join us in our vital work to keep our secular government free from religious influence. Become a member at FFRF.org or ask for a complimentary copy of our newspaper, Freethought Today. Freedom depends on freethinkers. Watch prior episodes of Freethought Matters on FFRF's YouTube channel.
Today, you're going to meet some leading abortion rights activists, freethinkers, and advocates of religious freedom. We've rarely had such a brilliant lineup of speakers as at the most recent national convention of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. And we're going to look at some of the highlights.
First up is Liz Winstead. Liz, a political satirist, received FFRF's Emperor Has No Clothes Award at the event. Liz Winstead was co-creator and head writer of Comedy Central's Daily Show. She's also founder of Abortion Access Front, a team of comedians, writers, and producers who use humor to destigmatize abortion and expose the extremist forces working to destroy reproductive rights access. Let's watch part of Liz Winstead's very funny talk as she tells it like it is.
And the intersections of hate are really what's kind of astounding, right? It's like they're very good at being intersectional. We talk about it, we need to be better on our side. But like, it's true, during COVID, we were trying to do abortion activism, but it was incredibly hard because the unmasked, unwashed nutbags were outside of the clinics and making things really unsafe. There was a woman holding a sign outside of a clinic that said, "I will not mask my unborn child." And I'm like, "Ma'am, you're wearing pants." If you're wearing underwear, you're double masking, so you better sue yourself. But we're in a mess. The Supreme Court, it's a mess. You know, I mean, the overturning of Roe, Dobbs, the arguments for Dobbs the questions were utterly, Amy Coney Barrett was like, why do we need abortion anymore when we just have drop boxes for babies now? Like, you know, can't you just drop it in the Blockbuster slot? Like, what is she even asking? Because Clarence Thomas terrifies me. Like, this whole Clarence Thomas mess, I am sort of obsessed with the fact that this Harlan Crow situation, you know, I mean, first of all, Harlan Crow has this garden called the Garden of Evil, where he has statues of, like, Stalin and all of these people, and yet he invites Clarence Thomas and Ted Cruz over to his house. It's like, why do you have these statues? You could just put up mirrors. Seems easier. Harlan Crow also has one of the largest collections of Nazi memorabilia. He actually has a copy of Mein Kampf. I don't know if it's signed, but he has the copy. And he has a yacht. So I'm like, what is his yacht called? The SSSS? It's one of my favorite jokes that I've written this year, I'm not going to lie. The SSSS. Thanks. But Clarence Thomas warned us the path, right? In Dobbs, he warned us. He wrote in his opinion that it was like, we should be looking at birth control. We should be looking at gay marriage. should we be looking at interracial marriage? And people like, not Clarence Thomas. And I was like, or yes, Clarence Thomas. Think about it. Ginny Thomas is terrifying. He probably can't even ask her for a divorce, so he's like, what if I make my marriage unconstitutional? That's one way to get rid of the old I know. I bet there's safe words like, don't tread on me. I think their favorite sexual position would be the overreach around. Stay with me. I'll stop with the Clarence Thomas visuals. I'm sorry. You're nice people. What am I even talking about? It's just chaos. It's all chaos. The House of Representatives is chaos. What is happening? Matt Gaetz is in charge, it seems. I know, Matt Gaetz. You know something? Here's a fun fact about Matt Gaetz. Did you know that Matt Gaetz was a strong proponent of the 1619 Project? Yes, until he found out it wasn't a dating site. So I'm just a clown who's mad, right? And I started my career wanting to expose hypocrisy, and doing it in corporate media spaces was super hard. Like, even at The Daily Show, they'd say to me, you can make fun of people, but we're not activists here. And it was like, that doesn't make any sense. Does it people a disservice if you're exposing hypocrisy, but then you don't give them the tools with which then they can fight the hypocrisy, right?
Jeremiah Kamara serves on FFRF's executive board. He's an author and the producer of the documentary films Contradiction, A Question of Faith, and Holy Hierarchy, The Religious Roots of Racism in America, both screening on Amazon. He told us about the overwhelming problem of white iconography.
I have on my phone at least 100 films that just, somewhere in the film shows white iconography, whether it be Moses or Jesus or whatever. And we just take it for granted. We don't even notice it. But no matter how so-called diverse the media wants us to believe things are, they draw a line when it comes to diversity in all things biblically related. On Hulu, we can find films and series like The Gospel of Mark, The Gospel of John, The Gospel of Luke, The Gospel of Matthew, and you guessed it, you won't find any inclusion of blacks in any of these films. There have been countless of biblical films, and I mean countless. I list a lot of them in my second documentary, Holy Hierarchy, The Religious Roots of Racism in America. Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, and all the other networks that have biblical films all project Jesus, his disciples, and all the other men of the Bible, their friends and all their families, etc., as white. And no one says a word about it, not even blacks. Do we really understand the devastating psychology of all of this? When we subject blacks and other non-whites to biblical images that reflect an ethnicity different than their own, we inherently do a psychological disservice to that individual.
Kate Cohen received FFRF's Freethought Heroine Award. Kate is a contributing columnist to The Washington Post, an Emmy Award-winning documentary scriptwriter, and author of 3 books, including We of Little Faith, Why I Stopped Pretending to Believe, and Maybe You Should Too.
So I told my kids that God was a human invention. And little by little, through them and for them, I gathered the courage to tell other people. Now, I realize I'm here today not because of what I said, to that other mom in Mrs. O'Brien's first grade classroom. Although, wouldn't that be cool? But because of what I told a newspaper audience. I told the Washington Post that though I admired then presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg, I was nervous about his using any appeal to religion, even for a good cause, even to fight Christian bullies. I asked how exactly posting the 10 Commandments in schools could stop school shootings. I pointed out that the reason some people think aborting a 6-week fetus the size of a blueberry is the same as killing a baby is because they believe babies exist before they're even conceived as souls in heaven that God sends down. I argue that hospitals that receive public money should make medical decisions based on medicine, not the Bible. In our culture right now, one where the prevailing assumptions are that people believe in God and that religious belief is the foundation for moral authority, taking these positions in public may seem brave. But all I'm trying to do is tell the truth in 800 words. Or more recently, 3,000 words. Sorry about that. To state what is obvious to me in a way that makes it obvious to others. To treat my readers' developing brains with respect. It's not like I read the comments. That would be brave. In my book, I tell a story about being at the grocery store with my daughter right after Christmas. She was a preschooler. Her little body still fit in that child seat of the cart with room to spare. Little brunette with a bob and bangs. We were waiting in line at the deli, and another shopper, pushing a cart with a couple of kids of his own, asked my daughter if Santa brought her anything good for Christmas. I thought this was a really dumb thing to ask a kid you don't know. I mean, this was in Albany, New York, where schools closed for Yom Kippur. And I was trying to think of a way to tell him off, but, nicely, when my daughter said to him, "Santa Claus is just pretend." Just like that. No attitude, just handing over information. I think about that sometimes when I write or speak about being an atheist. My daughter wasn't being brave. She was just telling the truth. And she didn't know yet it was a truth she wasn't supposed to tell, a truth she was supposed to hide. I do my best writing about atheism and religion when I manage to channel the matter-of-factness of a 4-year-old, when I don't stop to soft pedal or apologize. That poor dad lost all the color in his face and begged my daughter to keep quiet. "Don't tell my kids," he said. Don't tell. Now, I don't recommend telling other people's kids that Santa Claus is just pretend. But I do believe that telling the truth, even in tiny moments like these, can be a titanic act.
Mary Ziegler, a law professor at the University of California, Davis, is a noted abortion rights legal expert and advocate and Harvard Law School graduate. The 2023 Guggenheim Fellow has written 6 books on abortion history and rights.
Anti-abortion groups, for the most part, had been single issue, in part because they feared being labeled religious, right? The early anti-abortion movement was overwhelmingly Catholic, and abortion rights supporters often criticized that movement by saying it was a threat to the separation of church and state, a way for one movement or one group of people to impose their theology on everybody else. So anti-abortion groups tried really hard to make it seem as if that wasn't the case. They refused to take on issues like the death penalty or contraception that could make their cause look more religious. But by the 2000s, that had begun to change, and again, because of money. The more money flowed in and out of conservative religious organizations, the more conservative Protestant groups like the Alliance Defending Freedom, one of the groups that litigated Dobbs, became prominent. The Alliance Defending Freedom began raising money like gangbusters. It now has a well over $125 million annual budget. And the Alliance Defending Freedom was perfectly comfortable framing its cause as a Christian one and framing abortion as one of several issues related to religious liberty, the establishment of religion, same-sex marriage, and much more. As Alliance Defending for Freedom leaders explained, quote, "The Constitution was designed to reflect the Christian worldview of America's founders, who believed that our nation, quote, springs from the recognition of a creator God." So money enabled people who had been on the margins to come to the forefront of the anti-abortion movement and to make the possibility of a Pat Buchanan success thinkable. It was this idea that brought anti-abortion groups to the forefront of the litigation of Citizens United versus Federal Election Committee, which was started, as many crucial campaign finance cases in the Supreme Court were, by the anti-abortion attorney James Bopp. Citizens United was crucial for the anti-abortion movement, in part because many anti-abortion groups are corporations, and Citizens United allows corporations to have unlimited independent expenditures. It also changed the balance of power in the GOP. In the past, when someone like Pat Buchanan rose to the forefront, most money ran through political parties, and political parties who saw a candidate like Donald Trump or Pat Buchanan would use money to shunt them off to the side, prioritizing electability and making the trains run on time. But after Citizens United, a great deal of money is what we now think of as outside spending, right? Super PACs and nonprofits that don't care as much what the mainstream GOP, if such a thing even exists anymore, would think. So it was, in part, that Donald Trump was able to survive a primary challenge, not because he outraised or outspent his opponents, but because he had a cushion of outside spending to help him fend off challenges from what was remaining of the political establishment. Anti-abortion groups understood it was important to limit who could vote, too. True the Vote, which was formed in 2009, had as its lawyer a prominent anti-abortion attorney, James Bopp, who filed lawsuits in New Mexico and Virginia to stop those states from permitting early and mail-in balloting. In November 2020, after the election was over, Bopp filed 4 lawsuits challenging polling practices in 18 counties across 4 crucial states, including Wisconsin, seeking to overturn the election. He eventually grew disturbed by what he thought would be a failed strategy and bowed out of the case. And he told me later that his deep regret was not that he had tried to overturn the election, but that Rudy Giuliani was a terrible attorney. And he spent hours in his mind playing out how a better lawyer or a better strategy would have meant that Donald Trump could stay in the White House even longer. The end of the 2020 election hasn't changed the movement's interest in reducing voting rights. Prominent anti-abortion groups like the Susan B. Anthony List and the Thomas More Society have their own initiatives to limit voting, particularly early and mail-in voting. And yet it was, in the lead up to Dobbs, that anti-abortion lawyers insisted that it was Roe that was the threat to democracy, that Roe had taken away the abortion issue from the people and stopped them from having a say. This was the story Brett Kavanaugh told us. He promised a brighter tomorrow after Roe, the idea that we would all just sort this out among ourselves like friends in the states, and that sooner or later, the bitterness surrounding the abortion issue would fade into the rear view. That was never going to happen to begin with, in part because the Dobbs decision was deeply counter-majoritarian, ran against what Americans had indicated they wanted for poll after poll for 50 years. It's also wrong in part because it's not what anti-abortion groups wanted either. They want fetal personhood, which is much more than the Supreme Court gave them in Dobbs. That's why we've seen a dynamic where in the aftermath of Dobbs, Americans who support abortion have done remarkably well at the polls, winning every single ballot initiative on abortion rights to come before them since the Dobbs decision.
When we come back, we will hear from more secular experts and advocates.
Hi, I'm Ron Reagan, an unabashed atheist.
When I first recorded that commercial back in 2014, being openly atheist in America was still fairly uncommon. Today, the fastest growing religious group in the country is the non-religious, especially among the young. That progress is heartening, but the religious pushback is fierce and the forces of Christian nationalism are well organized. Our progress won't continue unless we work together so that reason and our secular constitution will prevail. That's why I'm asking you to join the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the nation's largest and most effective association of atheists and agnostics working to keep state and church separate, just like our founders intended. Please join the Freedom from Religion Foundation today. Ron Reagan, lifelong atheist, not afraid of burning in hell.
Welcome back to Freethought Matters. I'm Dan Barker.
I'm Laurie Gaylor, and we're going to continue hearing from secular experts and advocates. One of the most entertaining and enlightening speakers at the event was Ellie Mistel, who received FFRF's Clarence Darrow Award. Ellie is a Harvard Law School graduate and justice correspondent for The Nation. He talked about his new book, Allow Me to Retort, A Black Guy's Guide to the Constitution.
What I am an expert in, or at least what I play as an expert on TV as, at least until the actors' strike is over, is American law and its constitutional promise to craft a country not based on a shared religion, not based on a shared ethnicity, not based on a shared culture, but a shared commitment to the rule of law and secular equality. On that front, that I know something about, I can tell you that America is failing. We are failing as a secular nation and devolving into a brutal theocracy. And that failure is being led by the Supreme Court, which acts more like an unelected clergy than an impartial panel of judges. The heart of that failure goes to the Supreme Court's decision that there is religious tension written right into the First Amendment, and its decision to resolve that tension in the favor of fundamentalist Christians and nobody else. As most people here know, the First Amendment says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Lawyers call these two ideas the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause. And on paper, they make a lot of sense, right? The government will not force people into a religion, and it will not stop people from practicing whatever they want. In practice, this country has always treated the Establishment Clause as an annoyance that mainly is there to get in the way of people saying Merry Christmas, while putting a whole lot of effort into the Free Exercise Clause, so long as the religion that you wish to exercise freely involves some mention of Jesus Christ as the Lord and Savior. You know, bringer of good news, bringer of pizza, whatever it is. But as long as you have some mention of Jesus Christ, you're free to exercise your religion in whatever way you see fit. If you don't have that, if you have no religion, if your religion does not venerate Jesus Christ, then suddenly the country remembers that we're supposed to be secular and that we have an establishment clause that's supposed to prevent your exercise of your religion. Don't believe me? Try having your kids pray 7 times a day in the middle of school instead of praying just once on Sunday. And while you're there, tell me why Sunday isn't a school day to begin with. See, America doesn't need to establish an official religion because it already has. Christian theological practices are already embedded into the very definition of what we otherwise call secular norms. Right? If we were a truly free, religiously free country, Christmas would not be the holiday that everybody has the day off of. The Monday after the Super Bowl would be the holiday that everybody has the day off of. Even things as simple as obvious as the American military, which, the Army, which forces its new recruits to shave their heads and beards when they're signing up. That sounds secular until you remember that beard length is pretty important in lots of cultures. I don't even have to go, put it like this. Gimli, son of Gloin, would view being made to shave his beard as anything but secular, and instead a bit of wee elvish indoctrination. Okay, but this is going to surprise some people because despite everything I just said, for the most part, I am okay with this country's laxity when it comes to the Establishment Clause. Because bottom line, political rights and participation in this country are not gated behind religious faith. Jews can still vote in this country. Muslims can still run for office and win in this country. Is it harder for people who are Jews or Muslims or non-Christians or atheists to run for office and win and do these things? Yes, it's harder, demonstrably so. But it's not prohibited, which is more than I can say about a lot of other places in the world. At a technical level, the Establishment Clause is satisfied, even if we often fail to live up to the spirit behind the clause. My Establishment Clause problems are not actually about civil rights, civil liberties, or even cultural domination. My Establishment Clause problems are when people are forced to subjugate their literal bodies to satisfy Christian puritanical theocracy. The idea that people in the LGBTQ community should not be treated with dignity and respect in the marketplace, that's not a secular cultural norm, but a religious imposition. The idea that pregnant people cannot seek reproductive health care because such health care makes Jesus cry, allegedly, is the clearest example we have to date of the US government establishing one religion over all others.
That's our show for today, and if you'd like to read the entire speeches or hear them, you can find them at FFRF's website under the publication link, or go to FFRF's YouTube channel.
Thank you for watching Freethought Matters.
Because free thought matters.
Hi, I'm Steve Pinker. In my book, Enlightenment Now, I show that the world has become a better place as reason has been overcoming superstition and tribalism. But the values of the Enlightenment are under attack. That's why I'm a proud member of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the nation's largest association of free thinkers working to keep state and church separate. Please join me in supporting the Freedom from Religion Foundation to ensure that our government is driven not by religion, but by reason.